Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure, my distinct pleasure, to introduce to you my close friend, partner, and co-founder of Newsmakers Live, multi-Emmy award-winning journalist, political analyst, political editor, and the political voice in the city of Atlanta. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Maynard Eaton.
Now for the real stuff. The real stuff. I heard about this gentleman. Well, let me ask you this: who, for all those who don't know, if it don't fit, you must have quit. Who said that? It's a test. If it don't fit, you must. Who said that? Well, in a real sense, we have with us the heir apparent to Johnnie Cochran. This is a gentleman I heard about when I was in Montgomery. My lady lives in Montgomery. I heard about it. You don't know Jock? I saw billboards all over Montgomery. Jock Smith. I said, who the hell is that guy? Really? I said, who is this guy? But he was, hey, another journalist. So that's New Orleans. Anyway, Jock Smith is one of the greatest barristers, esquires you want to know. He's now taken over a national company called the Cochran firm. And welcome to the stage of Newsmakers, family, Mr. Jock Smith. Thank you, man. And he clean. Look at him. Have a seat. Here we go. This one on. Thank you. Jock, before we get into what you're doing now, give us a sense of what Johnnie Cochran meant. I mean, I could come up with that phrase, but you must have quit. But he was more than just a catchphrase. He was more than just a O.J. Simpson guy. Tell me a little bit about him and why this firm, even though he's deceased, is still surviving. Before we get into what you're doing.
Thank you for inviting me. First of all, it's good to be in the great city of Atlanta, Georgia. As president of the Cochran firm, I travel all over the nation, and no better place to stop than here, my brother. As far as the question of who is Johnnie Cochran, Johnnie Cochran was born in Shreveport, Louisiana, and he would hear the same song every day that his mother would play on the organ at the little Union Baptist Church. And the song was God's Unchanging Hand. And God had his hand on Johnnie Cochran. He birthed him out of the bosom of the earth in order to have a New Testament lawyer for African Americans. So the African Americans, we didn't have to play any horn or we didn't have to hit a ball. We could operate New Testament style in a civil courtroom or in a criminal courtroom, as he did in the O.J. Simpson case. What I used to do when Johnnie and I would travel around the country, I would introduce Johnnie, and I had an introduction that Johnnie used to kind of laugh about, and he would joke about, and people would always ask me to do this introduction. And so the best thing I could say about Johnnie Cochran would be an abbreviated post-mortem of the old introduction I used to do of Johnnie Cochran around the nation when he was living, as he was preparing to speak. My partner worked for Day Watch out of the United States of America. He carried a law license and policed civil crimes and was in righteous indignation to each and every act accompanying those crimes. At all times, this Johnnie L. Cochran Jr. carried on his individual personage his shield of faith, his helmet of salvation, and his breastplate of righteousness. This Johnnie L. Cochran Jr. stood in the vanguard and accused for each and every person who so voluntarily darkened the doors of the Cochran firm, USA. And as long as the good Lord allowed him to practice this most noble of all professions, he did so with fidelity and fanaticism. That, my brothers and sisters, is the essence and quintessence of this Johnnie L. Cochran Jr. And though he's going to be with the Lord, he's sitting and smiling on us today, looking down on these proceedings of great men like you in my presence, on the right hand of the Father. You want to ask about the Cochran firm today? Why has it survived? Somebody asked me once, you know, black people, we need to learn about legacy. I had a reporter ask me once, well, what are you going to do now? This was right after the death of Johnnie Cochran. And I said, let me ask you a question. What did the Yankees do when Babe Ruth died? Don't insult me. The legacy continues. We're all wearing Cochran pinstripes. We're trained in the admonition of Johnnie Cochran.
He was that good, or was that hyperbole, or was he that good?
He was that good. Johnnie, I asked Johnnie, we were riding out in Buckhead, ironically, one day. I was driving, and I said, Johnnie, if you had one thing that you had to tell a jury in every case, that's the most important thing you could tell a jury, what would that be? He said, that's easy, my brother. That's easy, my brother. What is it, Mr. Cochran? He said, tell a jury today you can make a difference. You are empowered today to make a difference in America in this case. This is your day to make a decision. This is your election day. I said, well, wait a minute, Johnnie. I tell juries that they're civil police officers. Are they civil police officers? Yeah. They need to carry nightsticks, don't they? Yeah, nightsticks. And those are the kind of conversations that we had. And so, yes, Johnnie was a very dynamic and creative individual. But the thing about Johnnie, more than anything else that people don't realize, is that he was the same way off camera as he was on camera. I never saw Johnnie curt or irresponsible. I never saw Johnnie refusing an autograph. I never saw Johnnie refuse a picture. I never saw Johnnie have anything but a smile on his face. He loved his people unconditionally. And Johnnie Cochran felt the heartbeat of Africa.
He seems like he still lives within you. His fire still breathes through you. And I hope through the firm. Is that true? Or was it? We have a cynicism about lawyers now. You know we do. Are they just trying to get paid? Are they just using us? Was he different or what? Because you're all making money. Give me a sense of, he still seems like his spirit breathes through you. And is it money or the avarice or the attitude of let's get this done?
It's not the money, and he does still live with us. As Johnnie used to always say, Johnnie Cochran 1-1, he said it every day. Service is the price you pay for the space you occupy. And so if you're occupying space and you're not providing any service, you need to get out of the way because there's somebody else sitting in your seat who wants to provide the very service that you should be providing. Johnnie believed that. The only time I saw Johnnie ever get mad at a lawyer in a law firm, Johnnie never got mad when you lost a case. Johnnie never got mad when you gave your best. Johnnie got mad if you didn't, to the fullest extent of your abilities, represent that client. And that was the only thing that I ever saw anger Johnnie Cochran. Anytime our firm would have a large case where we would bring in other lawyers and there'd be some dispute about the fee, Johnnie had a statement. One case doesn't make a difference. One case doesn't make a life. Let them have it. If they want it that bad, let them have it. I can get money in another case. I don't need it. I need my integrity.
Really? Well, is that atypical for attorneys, especially civil attorneys who get a piece of the pie? Is that atypical?
It is very atypical because a lot of civil attorneys are on a contingent fee and, of course, trying to get, as you say,
you're predators.
Trying to get paid in the case and sometimes lose focus on the fact that they're there to serve the least of these, as Jesus instructed us to do in Matthew.
And I guess serving, I know I have to dance around this a little bit, but before I get into your most notable cases that PR has been about, how did you step into the fray? Was the transition awkward? Transition smooth? His demise, his transition, led you to being, now you the top dog? You the top attorney?
Well, I'm president of the Cochran Firm for the nation, and we have 21 offices around the nation. And as to transition, the transition is always difficult when you lose your leader. When you lose your God-sent leader, any organization, that organization has to regroup. You've lost your general. And so it's been a very difficult and arduous task for us to pick ourselves up, as they say, by the bootstraps. But where you get your energy is in the courtroom, representing these clients. Or what I do, for example, most of my life is spent either in a courtroom or going around the country making a speech somewhere to some African-American group or some group of lawyers, trying to make a difference in people's lives, try to impart a New Testament way of practicing law.
A New Testament way of trying to practice. What is it? You said it twice now. What is it? A New Testament way? A spiritual, godly way? Is that what you're suggesting? Or a revolutionary way? What does that mean?
Yes, in a spiritual, godly way, as the Bible says, we should build our house on solid rock and not on sand. So build a strong foundation in the case. As Johnnie used to always say, they would ask him, what are the three most important things to being a successful lawyer? He said, that's easy. Preparation, preparation, preparation. And so we prepare. And the other thing is, your client becomes your friend in many instances. You become a person who you take a journey through the legal system. As Johnny's book said, the title of his first book, Journey to Justice, it is a journey to justice. It's not always an end. It's not always the means. But it's a journey, and we are responsible for escorting that client along that journey and have them understand what the justice system is all about, what they might expect from it.
To my knowledge, you're a legendary figure in Montgomery. The folks in Alabama just adore you. In fact, the last time I saw you was at the office of SCLC President Dr. Steele, where he said, man, you don't, this is the lawyer, my lawyer. I mean, you were revered. Why, and what does this book say about you? Climbing Jacob's Ladder.
Well, hopefully...
Are you the Johnnie Cochran of the South? I mean, what is it about you that people speak so highly and so respectfully and so reverently of you?
Well, people have been very kind to me because one thing I've learned, brother, and that is when you toot your own horn, you're just making a lot of noise. It's really up to the people to decide whether there's any vitality to your life, whether your life deserves a reputation of excellence. As far as the book goes, Climbing Jacob's Ladder, I wrote the book because my father, Jacob Smith, was a pioneer lawyer in New York. He was Count Basie's lawyer, Billie Holiday's lawyer, the lawyer for the NAACP, the lawyer for the Amsterdam News. You talk about black publication.
Oh, really?
And he was the civil rights lawyer in New York, and he went to work one day and he never came home. They assassinated my father and his law office for what he believed. And it took me out, brother, for several years. I went from the best student to the worst student in the New York City school system. And the reason I have so much passion today, and the reason I wrote this book, is because you can get up off the ground. A counselor told my mother that I would make a good garbage worker. Named Mr. Stein, but Climbing Jacob's Ladder says that we should never give up. Though they assassinated my father, I ultimately was fortunate enough to become Johnnie Cochran's partner and ultimately the president of the Cochran firm. It shows that God never gives up on you. Don't give up on yourself, and don't let somebody else determine who you are.
But now, am I mistaken about your legacy, the star status in the South, or were you a New York kind of guy too? I mean, am I wrong on that score?
Well, you know, the thing about it is that what I do, and Alabama's been very kind to me, and I have practiced there for many years, but I have cases that I try across the country, and I've tried a lot of cases all over the country. And what I think, if somebody would ask me what I feel best about in my legal career, other than serving the client in justice, is the fact that I've been able to win cases in very conservative venues with majority or all-white juries. And that's something that African Americans typically have not attempted to even do.
But you do it with a flair and a pizzazz, too. You don't come in there humbugging. I mean, you come in there with a panache.
Well, I come in with my history. It's like Malcolm X said in his message to the grassroots. Of all studies, history is the most qualified to reward all research. That's the first thing he said. It's the first thing he said in his speech.
Say that again. Say that again.
Of all studies, history is the most qualified to reward all research. That's what Malcolm said. And you know what? That's true. I have read a biography on every president of the United States. I read everything about the black authors, everything about Alexander Hamilton, everything about John Hancock. So when I go into these venues and I need to win a case, say I'm going into a white venue. I won a case recently, man. I was talking about George Washington crossing the Delaware in the midnight hour. Man, I had nothing to do with the case. You know, I was talking about Thomas Jefferson, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. You know, John Locke was a British philosopher from the 18th century that was Jefferson's idol. But Jefferson changed it from life, liberty, and property to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. So what I told this jury was, he struck that out. But Jefferson was up in Monticello, and he struck out property, he put in pursuit of happiness, which means that the lives of people are more important than property. And so a verdict against us is a verdict against Jeffersonian participatory democracy. A verdict against us is a verdict against the Declaration of Independence. A verdict against us is a verdict against Monticello. I want you all to think about it. Don't look at the color of my skin. I want you all to think about what you thought about me, not today, what you thought about me in 9/11 when we had this country together for 90 days and now it's falling apart again. We all forgot about race for 90 days. I want you to forget about it today. I want some justice, and I ain't begging, and I ain't afraid of who you all are. And they gave me a $2.5 million verdict for a black man.
So is it the stick? Is it the act? And let me ask you, did Johnnie Cochran get O.J. off? Was O.J. really guilty and he got him off?
Well, let me say this. O.J. Simpson was never proven guilty by Barr and Chris Darden. And let's not forget our friend Barry Scheck. You know, the DNA, brother, the DNA, you know? I mean, you know, and the thing about it is that, you know, the thing about the criminal system is so interesting. They have to prove a person guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, which means, here's what you tell a jury. Ladies and gentlemen, even if you think my client might have done it, but you have a reason to doubt it growing out of the evidence, you must acquit. If you say that my client, he might have did it, but I have a reasonable doubt growing out of some small infinitesimal piece of the evidence, it is your duty. It is your duty to acquit this defendant. And what it is all about is tying into the reasonable doubt standard. And if you look at how many people are on death row who were not guilty, and then you had DNA, and you had the Innocent Project, Newfield and Scheck, they got over 50 people who cried, most of them black men, for crimes they never committed. So it shows us that sometimes the system doesn't work to get the proper result, but it's probably the best system in the world.
But aren't you also saying, sir, that the system rewards those who can afford it?
Money is a factor. It's just like the old joke, you know, the old joke we hear about sometime where the client came to see the lawyer and told the lawyer, I want justice. The lawyer said, well, how much justice can you afford? I don't know if it's quite that bad, but I think that it has some tenets of that in it, yeah.
Are you sometimes embarrassed or encouraged or proud of your profession, not your firm, your profession, because it is often lambasted by comedics and also downgraded by those who've gone through the system?
I'm embarrassed sometimes by lawyers, and I'll tell you why. When material possessions and money become your God, when that becomes your Jesus rather than the service of your client, then you're in the wrong profession.
Thank you.
And I just think that integrity in the profession is more important. It's more important than wealth. Johnnie used to always have a statement about that. You can do well and do good at the same time, meaning that you can make a lot of money or a decent living and still do the job of representing the client. For example, I've turned down several cases over the years that I didn't believe in. A guy came to me one day and said, I want you to represent me. I said, well, I know you. You're the biggest drug kingpin in this community. You're a distributor. He said, yeah, and he had a suitcase. It was so full of money, brother, it was unbelievable. I said, well, the best thing you could do is hit the door. I said, because you're killing black folks. I'm not interested in representing you. I hope you're convicted. You're a thug. You're a criminal.
You said that to him.
You're a criminal. The child molesters come in. I said, I'm not interested. Children are our future, my brother. I have no interest. He said, you're judging me as being guilty. I said, no. I don't want to be sitting next to you just in case you are guilty. I'm not even going to take the chance of being in a room with you. I don't judge you. I don't want any part of it. That's just what I told him.
I see why you win, man. But that's another question. Well, back to crime. This gentleman, Anthony Parker, his paper makes money. It thrives over crime. Don't also St. Louis attorneys thrive on his newspaper? I mean, is there a symbiotic relationship here?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of crime out there, isn't it? And the thing is so sad, you know, is that the quality of life in America has dissipated to an all-time low, and therefore the quality of life of African Americans has dissipated doubly, terribly as bad. We have got to do better in cleaning up our community and do better in giving people an opportunity to live so that they won't have a need to commit these crimes. A lot of these crimes are committed out of need. Some are committed out of desperation. Some are committed because people know no other way to live. And it's a sad omen when we have so many people like the people in this room who could be of great assistance to many of these people. It's really sad when you think about it.
It's sad. It's also sad to read about this ugly, this dastardly fight over the estate, the will, if you will, over Rosa Parks, our legendary civil rights shero. You stepped in and cleaned it up. Could you explain to us, as much as you can, what that was about, why it got so nasty, and how you resolved it?
Well, thank you. I got called about a month before the Rosa Parks trial was to start, where 13 distant relatives of her brother's kids, that she really had no real relationship with, of any real meaning, supposedly, filed a contest to her living will and trust. And she left the majority of what she had to Elaine Steele, her co-worker and cohort, who started the Rosa and Raymond Parks Institute for Self-Development in Detroit, and the Rosa Parks Institute itself. We were able to get an amicable resolution of the case that I'm overly satisfied with. Our chief counsel for Rosa Parks Estate, which is an honor, chief counsel for the Rosa Parks Institute for Self-Help and Development, the Raymond and Rosa Parks. The main thing I felt going into the case was this. Though I felt we would have been successful in a trial, there would have been so much potentially damaging testimony about the image and the likeness and the image of this great civil rights icon, the mother of the civil rights movement. Now, my first responsibility wasn't to get on television or to be on national news, which I would have been on for a month, to try to pick up some more patronage for my career.
Well, that's unlike most attorneys.
But to get this thing resolved. And we got it resolved, and where we are now is this, on it. I'm a national spokesman now for the Rosa and Raymond Parks Institute for Self-Development. It has all these programs for kids, like Pathways to Freedom, where it takes kids to all the civil rights markers, like Selma Montgomery March, takes them to the Edmonds Pettus Ridge, takes them where Viola Russo was killed. All these places, all the black museums in the country, educates these kids. And what we need to do is to support this Rosa and Raymond Parks Institute, because that's the legacy of Rosa Parks. And it's in Detroit, Michigan, and my point was, I feel good about the fact that I left, which at the time, brother, was warm, sunny Southland between Atlanta and Montgomery, went to cold, rainy, snowy Detroit, and I sat in the hotel room and I was in prayer, and I just said, Lord, I hope I'm being led the right way, but I believe this is the right thing to do. They call me into this case. It's not about the resources they have or don't have. It's really about a legacy of our people. I've got to go up there. And I felt that was something I could do. And I went up there, I think, for the right kind of reason. I can look you in the face and say, it wasn't about money. And I feel good about what we were able to accomplish.
Hallelujah. I still don't quite get what were the other, were they after money? They were after pieces of her name? What were they after? What were they mad about? And what's left? I mean, were they paid off? Resolution means everybody gets something.
It's always about the money. Let's face it. It's about the money. And
she wasn't rich, was she?
She wasn't rich, but see, you have to understand that what happens in these situations is that you have two things. You have the property, which is the Presidential Medal of Freedom that Bill Clinton gave her.
Gotcha.
You have all the awards. You have dresses. You have the mink coat that she owned. You have all of this, and you could only imagine. I don't need to go any further. But even more important than that, here's the other thing. IP, intellectual property. Right. Every time somebody uses the name of Rosa Parks, guess what? They've got to take care of somebody who has that likeness and image. So what I like about it more than anything else is that as caretakers of that legacy, the Rosa Parks and Raymond Parks Institute has done an excellent job of preserving the assets and protecting the kids and making sure that we don't allow that name to be used to anybody who with sinister views. In other words, we're not going to get on television and let somebody abuse that name. They're going to have to come with an honorable purpose and an honorable calling, and then in exchange for that, we may be able to do some business. But the Institute, that is.
So, Jock, you're saying that you're in charge? You're calling the shots on Rosa Parks' image and likeness? Who can use it? How we get paid?
I am simply a national spokesman for it. The people who actually control it are Elaine Steele, Anita Peaks, and Lila Cabell, who's the executive person of the.
Are we about to see, or did we just get past some of the doo-doo we've seen between Pulitzer Prize winner I mentioned tonight, Cynthia Tucker, who talked about the King family incessantly, and how she thought they were bastardizing King's name or trying to profit from it. You know about that. Are we seeing a King family fight here about who controls the money and his likeness and his intellectual property?
What the fight is really about, in my opinion, is honoring the legacy and garnering income from the legacy to be used for noble purposes. See, the good thing about the Rosa Parks Institute, people may not know, it's a 501c3, so it's got to follow IRS regulations. It's got to send the money to worthy causes. It's got to put the money back into kids' programs. None of this money goes into the pockets of any of the women or people who are running the institute. But I think it's a thin line. You know, that's an interesting word, bastardizing. Because, you know, people might ask me, well, of course, the family owns the Cochran name. We have access to the Cochran name as far as law practice.
That was my next question.
What are we supposed to do now as the Cochran firm? People say, well, why are you running ads with Johnnie Cochran's image? Hello, that's our legacy. This law firm was left by Johnnie to us. We were the owners. We were the caretakers. And the documents simply indicate that if one of the partners passed away, the other partners would take over. Whether it was Mr. Cochran, if I had passed away, Mr. Cochran would have taken my interest. So I'm not a celebrity, but I'm simply saying it would have worked pretty much the same way.
He has a daughter here who works for Channel 11, a TV news reporter. Is she getting a piece of the Cochran firm's property?
By all means, yes, sir.
We're going to open up for some questions now. Questions, not commentaries, not documentaries, questions. For those who would like to ask this esteemed attorney a question. What, the microphone's over here, near the pretty lady, the one who runs our show. Why the transition from criminal representation to what some cynics would say is a quick money, big money, civil rights, civil attorney stuff?
That's a very fair and very good question. Here's the answer. When Johnnie had the O.J. case, the O.J. Simpson case, he had only 3 other criminal cases in his entire office. 95% of his portfolio was civil. For example, guess what? Guess who got the largest jury verdicts and the largest settlements in the history of the nation, California, civil judgments against the police for misconduct? Johnnie Cochran. Who was the lawyer who was successful in filing civil suits against discrimination in California? Johnnie Cochran. Who represented the L.A. bus company in civil matters? Johnnie Cochran. So the point was, but here's the thing about it. Johnnie was once elected the civil trial lawyer of the year for L.A., and then 2 years, he was selected the criminal trial lawyer, so he won both awards. But primarily, Johnnie was a civil litigator, and if you remember the history, because you're a very smart media person, remember this, what happened. When O.J. first wanted Johnnie, Johnnie said, no, I'm not interested in the case, and they kept calling, and finally went home to ask his father, Johnnie L. Cochran Jr. He said, Dad, what am I to do? O.J. continues to call. And his dad said, well, son, I'm from the old school. I always believe if a man needs your help, you ought to help him. And Johnnie said, only then, from his dad's advice, he picked up that telephone and engaged serious discussion with O.J. about the representation.
But he didn't do the civil case, which O.J. lost.
He did not. He did not handle the civil case. The civil case was handled by somebody else. By that point, Cochran was pretty much out of it. He wasn't asked, actually, what happened. You may know how this works. When somebody gets sued civilly, guess what generally happens? The insurance company decides, well, defending Simpson, I'm sure they probably sued under the homeowners if they got any money, get anything at this point. The insurance company would decide what lawyers would be hired to defend Mr. Simpson. And I suspect that's what happened then.
Were you a civil litigator or a criminal attorney prior to becoming a star Esquire?
I had 10 years of criminal law, and then after that, in the mid-'80s, I went into civil law, and have been practicing civil law, 20, 25 years now. And but I felt like I had done everything I could accomplish in the criminal system. I'd gotten people acquitted of, major crimes, rapes and murders and everything.
But Jock, I've heard others say this. I've heard many people say this, and you've heard it too. That we're losing our best and brightest legal minds from defending the wrong of society, defending those who've been met with injustice, to those who want to make money or deserve money. Are we losing our best and brightest to cases that seem to be getting rewards?
You're right about one thing that you're saying, and I think you're making a great point. The criminal system, the problem with the criminal system is that it's hard for lawyers to make a living surviving in the criminal system because most people breaking in the liquor store don't have enough money to hire a lawyer. Otherwise, they wouldn't be holding up the mom and pop. Now, yes, there are people who need representation. You're right. And they are entitled to quality lawyers. And there are a lot of quality criminal lawyers up there, around the country. But as far as making if you're not handling white-collar crime on a regular basis, you're not representing the Scooter Libby's of the world, like our brother Ted, black lawyer, by the way, representing him, a guy named Ted Wells. If you're not doing that kind of work, it's very difficult.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith, Al has a question.
Yes, Mr. Smith, it's an honor to be in your presence.
Thank you.
My question is about the image that you talked about with the intellectual property discussion. How do we today begin to consider communicating something else to our young people who see gangster rap and some of the other opportunities for entertainment that degrade women in particularly as an opportunity for image and legacy, and how do we begin to communicate to them the kind of legacy that you and Brother Cochran is now leaving as an image as we move into the 21st century?
Well, you ask, as my first year law school contracts professor used to always say, you ask a very efficacious question. I remembered that word.
Which means, to those who don't know.
You asked a very deep and penetrating question. You know what? The question is timely because of Don Imus. Don Imus has done more to challenge the language of rappers in the last 48 to 72 hours than any of the rest of us have done over the last 10 years. And so it's brought the discussion to the floor. And I think what's going to happen is the indecency of the language that has been sort of accepted by what I call the rap culture generation is now going to be challenged. I talked to a lawyer the other day, and he went home and he said to his son said, well, Daddy, I saw this thing on TV they're talking about nappy-headed whores. He said, I didn't realize that was bad language, but after hearing the way they're criticizing this white man, maybe I need to rethink, Daddy, what I've been listening to. He said, he was proud of his son because his son was watching the TV. He said, wait a minute. I thought this was acceptable language. And he saw Don Imus in the attack. And so I think the first answer is Don Imus. Don Imus has awakened some young people who took the earplugs off just for a minute and listened to the television, that that language is unacceptable. And people think that language, you see what they try to do when they make these verbal mistakes, they try to say that, well, this is part of black culture. But just like I told a person, that didn't know, I said, this nappy-headed comment is very offensive, and sometimes a lot of people don't understand why that was so offensive. You get into it and you explain it. And then, of course, hoes, everybody understands that. Then one guy told me the other day, he said, I've never heard that term used before. I said, you never heard the term hoe before? I said, well, apparently you haven't grown up in urban America. I don't know where you...
So let me ask you. As a prime time, nationally recognized, big time civil litigator, if Imus called you, would you defend him? Would you recommend him?
Oh, no, mama didn't raise no fool. No, because you know what? You know what's interesting? I'm going to answer that in an interesting way. The Jesus of the Bible, when he was asked, said he was when he asked what's your reputation, he said, I'm of no reputation other than that which I garnered through my Father. But I would say this, in spite of what the Lord Jesus Christ said, I understand where he's come from. The reputation that you have, that you work hard to build up, which is based really on credibility and excellence, is an earned reputation from one African American to another. I would never compromise the love and support of people who are in this room and their children's children in the discourse of money and put at risk everything that my father worked for, everything that Mr. Cochran worked for, and everything I worked for. I think anybody that does that, I think they're very short-sighted, and I think they have lost their focus about who we are as a people.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have one of the nation's top black attorneys. His name is Jock Smith. He heads the Cochran Group. We're so happy to have him in the Newsmaker family. Thank you, brother.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
God bless you. Come on, Jim. Jim, welcome is the parting commentary.
What we've witnessed here tonight is a wonderful example of what open-minded leadership, and specifically black leadership, has to offer in its real sense. When we talk about the issue of money and his practice, it's a no-brainer. You must make money because in America, unless it has a value, it has no value. This is just the reality of the world we live in. We are thankful for gentlemen like Mr. Smith who have the insight and, more importantly, the awareness to understand that value. Our children in America, and I say our children because these rappers that we talk about are our children, we are afraid of them and we have them under assault. But the language, the words, and the deeds, the message, and the music is intrinsically a black experience. This has been Newsmakers.